G'day folks, my name is Jim Allen and I'm the owner of a Hurley 9.5 motorsailer. I have owned this boat now for 8 years and lived aboard the boat for 8 years in a marina. So I thought it might be interesting to make a little video showing a little introduction to the Hurley 9.5 motorsailer. Hurley Marine was founded by George Hurley, who was a carpenter and shipwright living in Plymouth in Devon. He started the business and began making first of all car bodywork, but then progressing to a small sailing yacht, the Hurley 18 I think it was, and then about the same time as fiberglass production was coming online, he expanded into 22 foot, 27 foot and 30 foot models, using naval architects Anderson, and in the case of the 9.5 motorsailer, G.K. Collier. Some information can be found on the Hurley owner's website, which is where I got this information from, but you can look up the site yourself and find relevant information for any of the particular models you may be interested in. My own version of the 9.5 is a one-off fit out, so it is slightly different to the standard versions. Most of them have wraparound windows, whereas my boat had only very small windows, one in the galley, one in the toilet, one small window in the saloon at either side, and none at all in the aft cabin. However, at some date in the boat's history, someone put a window into the aft cabin, and I had a window put into the fore cabin because it's always nice to look out. There again, because the boat is in Spain, when you have too much light coming in through the windows, it's very difficult to sleep at night time and quite difficult to keep all that light out. Maybe that's the reason the original owner didn't commission the boat with larger windows to begin with, or whether to save money. Who knows? There are some other differences in this particular fit out. For example, this boat is entirely wooden interior, whereas the other ones have moulded fiberglass interiors, with the exception, of course, the very first boat, which was called Hurley made, and that was built in Iroko, and obviously it was all wooden interior. Other differences on my yacht is that the toilet compartment has a separate shower compartment, which is really a great benefit and very rare on a boat of this size. The galley is quite large, and I have made some false wall and some storage units to help it be even larger, because I do believe a large galley is quite useful and quite essential if you're actually going to live on the boat. I also have a hanging locker in the saloon, which the other models don't have. And in the aft cabin, I have a hanging locker either side as you go in, and it did have 2 single berths, but I've now converted that to a double berth, which I think is one of the best things I've done on the boat. Anyway, I shall proceed to show you a few details and plans and little aspects of the boat, and may continue with a few others in this series, including a walkthrough of the boat to be shown in a different video. So the Hurley 9.5 was designed as a purpose-built motorsailer by naval architect G.K. Collier. The intended length is about 30 foot 6 inches, but with a little bit at the bow and the stern, it comes to almost 31 foot, with about a 10 foot 3 beam and 3 foot 9 draft. Some models were built with triple keel, that is to say the main keel and 2 side plates. In fact, the yacht I have was one of them, but unfortunately in my yacht, one owner decided to take them away. Originally, the layout plan had the saloon in what we would consider to be the front cabin of any other yacht. Saloon followed by galley and toilet, center cockpit, wheelhouse, and then aft 1 single berth on each side. After Hurley went out of business, the the molds were sold to Elizabethan yachts, who slightly modified the boat and called it the Meridian 31. They made the saloon amidships in the boat, which is possibly a bit of an improvement, and the double bunk in the port side, in the aft cabin, which is definitely an improvement. And they made the deck into a flush deck instead of the step deck of the original 9.5. Now, the story of how I came to buy this particular boat goes something like this. When I was in Bolivia, I spotted for sale a boat in Scotland, and it was a Hurley Meridian 31, and I would have liked to have bought that boat. But before I could get back up here to see the boat in Scotland, it was sold. So at the same time, another boat was for sale in Spain, and as I always wanted to have a little boat in Spain, I thought I ought to go and have a look at that one. That, of course, being the original version, the Hurley 9.5 motorsailer. Before going to look at the boat, I got hold of the architect's plan, and I built a little model from Frosty's packets, and that gave me a fairly good idea of what the boat would look like in real life. So I flew out to the city where the yacht was berthed and spent a couple of days there looking around and admiring the boat in the distance from the seawall before going to check out the boat. One of the things that attracted me most to the boat was the ease of getting on board the boat, because it was moored Mediterranean style, with the stern of the boat alongside the pontoon. Another boat I saw at the same time advertised was in Mallorca, and that had pointed bow and pointed stern with a ladder hanging down, which seemed almost impossible to get on. So the large after-deck platform with the gap in the railing was definitely one of the factors that persuaded me to buy this yacht, and that factor in itself was a pretty good choice. So we have next a view of the boat as it was in the last couple of years, and an elevation drawing which I made because I'm very fond of measuring everything that exists on the boat. And here we have a plan of the boat showing the saloon in the bow, the galley, which is a little bit modified with some extra storage, and the aft cabin, which has the double berth in it, or very large berth, shall we say, which I mentioned earlier. The seller of the boat had done some improvements to the yacht and put it up for sale a couple of years earlier, that is to say before I saw the boat, at which time it had a proper galley. However, by the time I came to see the boat, he had sold it twice to people who had not paid for it, and had done some selling off of bits and pieces of the boat. And the big mystery was what happened to the galley, because at the time I came to buy the boat, there was no galley. The proper cooker with oven had been sold off. I think there were some hippie types, and they practically sold off all the equipment of the boat. So the galley was down to the bare minimum. They had put in, or the owner had put in, a gas bottle standing on the floor, telling me that was no problem whatsoever, when of course it's against all the rules of having gas on a yacht, because it ought to be in a separate compartment which vents over the side of the boat. And one of the hippie type owners had done a bit of scrawling on the woodwork in the saloon, but that wasn't too bad to remove. And then one day I found a cooker standing on the quayside. Someone was throwing it out. So I thought I would take this aboard and have a go at making a space for it. So I built a wooden stand, because the cooker came with a set of gimbals. So just to get experience, I installed this cooker first in the low position where you have a worktop, but that didn't work out so great. So I raised it up by a few inches so it was at the same level, or the flame was about an inch or two above the level of the surrounding workspace, and I preferred that system much better. The two rings on top did work reasonably well. Unfortunately, the oven didn't reach operating temperature, and the grill was also broken. So As I'm living in a marina, I tend to use electric hot plate most of the time. It hasn't been a problem, although in the future, if possible, I would like to get a proper marine gas cooker. I think most professional chefs prefer cooking on gas, and I think it's to be the same because the hot plate doesn't really heat up enough if you want to do frying, for example, and the gas gives you immediate heat with good control and all that kind of stuff. The saloon table was originally a rectangular affair made out of plywood, quite large, and mounted on a metal post which took up quite a lot of space in the saloon. So I got rid of that and purpose designed a table built out of marine ply, which backed up onto the divider between the saloon and the galley. Then I had the idea to build on top of that a kind of fake wall which would hold storage compartments. Each compartment was designed to be the width of, for example, a can of beans or a can of soup or something of that order. So first of all, I made a mock-up in cardboard. Most of the projects I do on the boat, I save up old Frosties and cornflakes packets, and I make them out of cardboard first of all, or scrap material, to see how it looks and if it's likely to work out well. So I made the first attempt out of cardboard and then replaced it with marine ply and varnished it. That gave me quite a lot of extra storage space around the galley, which I would say is one of my improvements. I could also mention that I noticed that some older designed British boats, quite large, up to 34, 36 feet even, don't have much of a galley space. All they have is a cooker and next to it a sink and no workspace. And I think that is quite unsatisfactory for a boat you're going to live on. So a good galley working space is really a priority. Now, I don't consider myself the greatest chef in the world or anything like that, but many years ago I did take up an interest in cooking, largely due to a TV program by the celebrity chef, as he then was, Keith Floyd, beginning with his series Floyd on Fish and continuing on to other Floyd in Spain and Floyd in wherever else it was, along with his glass of wine. And I think the thing that he did was he made it interesting. And if you find something interesting, that gets you started in something that you might not otherwise have thought of. So years ago I collected a few cookery books and collected the best pages and so forth like that and built up my own little cookbook, which I called the Explorer's Cookbook. Of course, I don't really use it very much because these days you can go online and find good little films on YouTube. In the beginning, I used an electric cookpot made by Princess, and that was an absolutely wonderful thing, except that it only lasted for about 8 months before it stopped working. So then I took it back to the shop and they gave me a replacement, which I thought was great, although it was under guarantee. And that worked for another 8 months and then it stopped working again. But of course, I would say not so much the fault of the manufacturer, but just a consequence of living on the boat, that sometimes electrical things, they could work for a couple of months or a couple of years, and something to do with the salty marine environment tends to destroy them after a while. So I also had in the beginning round non-stick cookpots, and they're always great when you buy them to start with, and after a little while they don't become very much non-stick. But I did see it advertised in a catalogue, a thing called a boaty frying pan, which was a rectangular pan and designed to fit on the marine cooktop, which seems great. I didn't have one of those, but I did see in a Chinese bazaar a square pan with ridges. So I bought that one, and I have to say that's one of the best things I ever bought because it truly is non-stick. Now, I have always been interested in how to make English-style chips at home, so collected different little YouTubes on those, and also how to make Kentucky Fried Chicken with a variety of different methods experimenting on the boat until I did find one which worked best for myself, and that should also be the subject of another little movie. So that just about brings me to the end of this little cookery corner, which of course we can't leave without mentioning that other great famous English favourite, which is the English breakfast. And of course you can get them in Spain, but they're not really the same as you would get back in England. And the only thing for that is to make it yourself, and you can't go wrong. And then you can invite a friend for English breakfast and a glass of wine on your yacht. At the time I bought the yacht, the saloon had had the main backrests replaced, and also the settee berth cushions replaced with 2 large chunks of foam roughly cut to shape. Also the seating had been replaced with a piece of plywood which I varnished. And it didn't take long to cover these foam berths with blankets to be going on with, and sometime later I was able to cut them into 3 sections to give access to the spaces for storage underneath.
Se va, en ese tren se va, en ese tren mi amor.
So here is the toilet compartment with the toilet, which is an RM69. I replaced the previous TMC toilet because every 6 to 8 months the spring would break, and I had to bring one out from England. Cost 80 cents from an ironmonger's, whereas if I bought the kit here it would have cost say €20. That went on for a number of years until it had really had its day, so I replaced it with the new one, which is the RM69. The big advantage on this boat, which is quite unique really, is a separate shower compartment, and that's very useful, including in the summertime when you want to have a quick cool off. And there's nothing fancy about it, it just has a 5-litre bottle which I put in and made a container, and it runs from a small electric pump behind the wall, and that, generally speaking, works quite well. Of course, in a marina there are always the proper showers, but it's quite useful to have a separate shower compartment on your boat instead of the shower water going all over the toilet unit and making a mess of that side. So that is the toilet compartment on my boat here. The aft cabin originally had a single bunk on either side, and because this boat has a storage locker each side, that meant your feet had to go underneath a box called a lazarette, which descended into the cabin from the deck above. At one time it had a tight-fitting lid, but that had been lost, and with the replacement plywood lid, water would come into the box, so any metal items would go rusty very quick. In fact, because of the reduced space due to this box, we had to sleep diagonally across the cabin from one corner to the other corner on top of the 2 single beds. However, one day I had the bright idea that if I could cut out this box, I would make a lot more space. That was, of course, a bold decision, not knowing whether I would make an improvement or destroy the boat, but I decided to go ahead and cut out the facing panel and then the side panels, clearing quite a lot of space and really opening up the whole cabin, whereas before items were trapped in side pockets where it could be damp with condensation. Now it made quite a large, roomy space. I panelled over the inner part of the stern of the boat with this floorboarding material, and went up to the market where I bought a piece of giant foam and cut that in sections to fit on top of the existing mattresses. So that made a very large, comfortable bed on top of the single beds, and I will give you a look around with a moving video in one moment. Here we are in the aft cabin, and that is one of the large lockers. There is one either side, which is a unique feature on this yacht because the other yachts like this don't have them. And then coming around we have wonderful storage units. Each unit and under the deck I have faced with 1-inch white polystyrene, and on top of that I have put some floorboarding to make it look a bit prettier. Then we can move around a bit and have a view towards the rear, and we can see at the back not a giant skateboard, but in fact a trolley made in Germany, which may be useful for lifting or moving heavy objects such as an engine one day. And then the bed itself I have overlaid with large foam on top of the 2 single mattresses to give a very comfortable bed, a giant sized bed. Up here we have on each side the normal size window, which I have, in order to reduce the amount of sun coming in, made little sliding contraptions to keep the sun out. And otherwise it's very difficult to sleep with the amount of light that comes in. Maybe that's why the original owner who commissioned the yacht didn't fit any windows in this cabin at all. However, I did myself fit this little one, which is a 9-inch square hatch, and that now lets some air into the boat. So these kind of things, in my view, we have to keep working to make improvements on things that can be improved. One of the best features of the yacht, I would say, is the wheel shelter, which helps to keep out the elements. This is one of the only, as far as I know, Hurleys that was built with a wooden wheel shelter instead of the standard aluminium one. When the yacht arrived in the port where it is now, the original woodwork was in poor condition, but the seller had the wheelhouse rebuilt by a local carpenter, which now gives the yacht a rather unique and attractive look. So here we have the inside of the wheelhouse. It's quite comfortable. The door, I have a little window I made, an Araby style grille on it, because I like to be able to see out from the inside when the door is closed. And then we can have a look around, and as you can see a little bit out, I have the cover over the roof to keep the sun off. And then it's about 5 foot long, so it's long enough to be comfortable to lay down on, but not that you would want to sleep on it, unless you're not more than 5 foot, of course. I'll come around to the opposite corner. I have a little window I made in the aft cabin as well, so that air through that one, and any guests can sit over there. So this is the kind of wheelhouse I like, which is called semi-enclosed. And I have the cover, as you can see, and an aft screen, and in the summertime I'm planning to make a centre panel just up there, which will help to keep rain out and possibly mount a solar panel as well, and modify the side screens slightly. But these are all projects which I do keep making improvements. Every so often the yacht has to be lifted out of the water and chopped up on the land in the workyard. And this gives one the opportunity to get rid of the barnacles, the accumulated growth from the sea, and also to check over the underwater section of the hull. This also gives me the opportunity to point out in this picture that the boat has what you might call a long keel with a cutaway forefoot, which is what I believe to be desirable in a sailing yacht and helps keep the boat on course without the use of too many autopilot maneuvers. Also, I could point out that the keel is completely moulded on this boat. That is to say, there is no shallow hull with a small fin keel in the centre bolted on afterwards. Also, within the keel, there is 2 tons of encapsulated lead ballast, which helps to improve the stability of the yacht.